Space Flu by Spectral Spooks. Summary: Dave catches the space flu, and who better to help him than his doting ecto-sister? Rose had almost wanted to laugh, but the sight really was a bit pathetic. The cool kid himself was wrapped in about 3 garishly patterned blankets, covering him to the point where only context could let her guess who was under there. "Ni, are you still alive?" she called out, prompting the Dave-shaped lump to shift and wriggle. "Or should I start preparing the funeral?" "Rose?" came a muffled, uncertain croak. The blankets shifted just enough to allow a messy head of hair to poke through. The one and only. I caught. "The space flu," her ecto-brother mumbled, sounding like it hurt quite a bit to speak. "How, Rose? How do you even catch a flu when you're literally floating through space?" She didn't respond, careful not to reveal anything on her face as she sat down next to him on the bed. Not that he would probably notice if she was acting guilty. He seemed pretty out of it. "You poor thing," she cooed instead, half condescending, but in the way where he'd know she was really being genuine. "Should I make you some soup?" Soup. Dave started and then trailed off, seeming to lose his train of thought after only one word. Damn, it was even worse than she thought. Maybe she should make the dose a little lower next time. But then again, a more cognitively aware Dave tended to be a more stubborn Dave. There was no point if he resisted any efforts to actually let himself be taken care of. If this was the only way she could get the idiot to relax for a while, then so be it. She scooted closer, reaching up to brush fingers through the mess of blanket hair and straighten his shades where they'd gotten crooked. He barely responded to her ministrations, but seemed to relax subconsciously at the attention. She smiled to herself. "Why don't you try to sleep for a bit, and I'll make you some soup for when you wake up?" Dave didn't really answer, but gave a little sigh she interpreted as resignation. Being this close to him, she also noticed a slight tremor, as he shivered even while wrapped in so many blankets. She frowned and halfway unwrapped the cocoon, garnering a weak protest before she pushed her own warm body against his as a replacement. He settled easily against her then, appreciating the warmth and human contact in his half-aware state. She could feel his shivers much more acutely this way and, concerned, she tried rubbing a hand against his arm. In an attempt to warm him up a bit, she rubbed his side, his legs, anywhere she could reach from her current angle. When she got to his inner thigh, he seemed to almost startle against her, the most physical reaction she'd gotten out of him since she'd entered the room. "Oh? Sensitive?" She half teased, half asked. "Shut up," he grumbled half-heartedly. "Hands off the goods." "What goods?" She laughed. "I'm touching your thigh, Dave." He didn't respond that time, so she kept her hand where it was curled around his adductor muscles, stroking a thumb lightly back and forth over his pajamas. Dave kept his jaw firmly clenched in obstinance, but couldn't seem to help but twitch with every movement. Curious, she moved her hand up a little bit and was pleased to earn herself a surprised gasp. "Rose, what are you doing? What do you think I'm doing?" she asked exasperatedly. "You're being purposely obtuse." "I don't think this is how my sister is supposed to be touching me," he grumbled in response, genuine embarrassment bleeding into his tone. "Oh, come on now," she laughed. "Don't think I've forgotten the things you used to say to me, before we knew we were related. Isn't this what you've always wanted?" Silence. A more clear-headed Dave might have found a clever joke to make the sidestep the question, or even just snapped at her, but this Dave just tucked his head into the crook of her shoulder, seemingly unwilling to engage verbally with the topic. Fine by her. If he didn't want to talk about it, she had other ways to confirm her suspicions. She trailed the hand up until it landed on a solid bulge tucked between his legs. Dave all but yelped, his irritated vocal cords cracking under the strain of the exclamation. "Rose!" he squawked. "Shh, just relax, Dave," she reassured. "Let me take care of you." His lips flapped like he was trying to come up with something to say, but it morphed into a gravely moan as she grasped him properly through his pants. "Good boy," she whispered, pleased as he instantly turned bright red at the comment. She'd always guessed he might have a praise kink. Oh God, He whimpered, his hips already bucking against her. As she squeezed and released a few times, she felt emboldened enough to slip her hand under his waistband, dipping into his undoubtedly hideous boxers, to grasp him without any fabric in the way. He moaned again uncontrollably as she attempted to stroke the heated shaft. Feeling it already beginning to stir under her attention, one of his hands reached to grab onto her shirt, as if trying to ground himself. She wondered if he'd ever been touched this way before. She didn't think she was that good at this, but it was incredibly gratifying how reactive he was. "Rose, please," he started before trailing off, unable to finish the plea. A bit of dampness quickly started to form, his tip leaking as she worked him. She almost wanted to tease him for it, getting wet after only a bit of teasing, but it made her warm to think he was feeling that good. She tried to thumb the tip the way she'd read in novels, gathering some slickness on her fingertip before going back to stroking and squeezing. She then reached down further, gently squeezing his testicles and earing herself a downright whimper. She grinned, but reached her free hand to hold his comfortingly, shooshing him through the onslaught of sensations. "Rose." With little warning, he twitched violently, a warm substance spraying out into his boxers and coating her hand. A certain sense of love and pride bloomed through her as he wheezed for breath through his clouded lungs. "See, that wasn't so bad now, was it?" she asked. He said nothing, but that was to be expected by this point. It seemed like he was already drifting off to sleep. Good. She'd let him rest for a bit, then bring him soup like she'd promised.